The first time I heard Monica say it, I was standing in my own kitchen, frozen with a plate of leftovers in my hands. Her voice carried from the living room where she thought she was alone on her phone call. Yeah, his mom is this washed-up has-been, who thinks she's still relevant because she runs some tiny consulting firm. She keeps giving me career advice like she knows anything about the modern workplace. I just smile and nod. But honestly, she's probably jealous that I'm already making more at 25 than she ever did. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The laugh that followed was sharp, dismissive, cruel. Don't worry. Once Liam and I are married, I'll make sure he keeps his distance from her. She's holding him back, with all her outdated thinking. What Monica didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have imagined as she mocked me in my own home, was that her dream job at Denver's most prestigious marketing agency? I owned it. Every paycheck she'd ever received, every promotion she was angling for, every incredible opportunity she bragged about. It all came from the woman she'd just called a washed-up has-been. But this story isn't just about one cruel conversation overheard in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is about what happens when someone who thinks they hold all the cards discovers they've been playing poker with someone who owns the entire casino. It's about how a manipulative user who thought she could climb the corporate ladder by stepping on the people who loved her most learned that underestimating the wrong person can destroy everything you've worked for. Over the next 70 minutes, I'm going to tell you how 20 years of building a business empire from my kitchen table led to one of the most satisfying moments of justice I've ever witnessed. You'll discover how careful investigation and strategic patience uncovered a web of workplace manipulation and family betrayal, how one perfectly timed revelation changed everything, and how someone who thought she was untouchable learned that actions have consequences, especially when you don't know who's really watching. By the end of this story, you'll understand why that cruel comment about me being a washed-up has-been was the biggest mistake Monica Rivera ever made, and how my hidden identity as her actual boss turned her perfectly planned life completely upside down. My name is Blanche Morrison, and at 52, I've built something most people only dream of. 20 years ago, when I was 32 and had just been laid off from a corporate marketing job, they told me I was too old to understand digital marketing. The younger executives said I didn't have the vision for the future of advertising. They said I should probably look into something more suitable for someone my age, maybe teaching or retail. I proved every single one of them wrong. Today, Morrison Strategic Communications is Denver's premier marketing agency. We represent Fortune 500 companies, handle political campaigns that shape state policy, and guide emerging brands from startup to success. Our client list reads like a who's who of Colorado business, and our campaigns have won every major industry award. I deliberately keep a low profile, no flashy office building with my name blazing across the front, no social media presence showcasing my personal life, no appearances at industry conferences seeking recognition. I prefer to let our work speak for itself, and it speaks volumes. What most people don't realize is that this approach isn't just about humility, it's strategic. When you're underestimated, when people don't know the full extent of your capabilities or influence, you see things others miss. You hear conversations you're not supposed to hear. You learn who people really are when they think you don't matter. I've used a management company to handle day-to-day HR operations since we grew beyond 50 employees. Most of our staff never interact with me directly. They know Morrison Strategic. Communications has an owner, but in their daily experience they report to department heads, get their assignments from team leaders, and assume the mysterious founder is either retired or hands-off. This structure has served me well. It keeps the company running smoothly while allowing me to observe the true character of our people without the filter of boss-employee dynamics. My son Liam is the center of my world. At 28, he's everything I could have hoped for in a child. Thoughtful, intelligent, genuinely kind. He works as a software engineer at a respected tech firm, and he's always been careful about the people he brings into our lives. He understands what it means to have worked hard for everything you have, because he watched me build this company from nothing. He's seen me pull all-nighters to meet client deadlines, watched me risk everything on a campaign that could make or break us. Witness the careful balance of strategy and intuition that turns a good business into a great one. So when Liam introduced me to Monica Rivera 6 months ago, I wanted desperately to love her. I wanted to see in her the woman who would make my son happy, who would build a life with him based on mutual respect and shared values. I wanted to be wrong about the subtle warning signs that only a mother and a businesswoman who's learned to read people might notice. Monica was undeniably beautiful, with the kind of polished confidence that opens doors and commands attention. She was intelligent, articulate, and ambitious, qualities I've always admired. She'd landed what she described as a coveted position at what she called Denver's hottest marketing agency. She had no idea she was describing my company to me. During our first dinner together, Monica dominated the conversation with stories about her innovative campaigns and how she was revolutionizing the marketing industry. She spoke with the passion of someone who genuinely loved the work, which I respected. But as the evening progressed, I noticed something troubling. She never asked about anyone else's work. Not once did she inquire about Liam's projects, about my husband's research, or about my own professional background. When she finally did ask, almost as an afterthought, clearly fulfilling a social obligation rather than genuine curiosity, her response revealed everything I needed to know about how she saw me. "What do you do, Blanche?" she asked, her tone suggesting she expected nothing particularly interesting in response. "I run a small consulting firm," I replied, keeping my answer deliberately vague. Her smile became patronizing, the kind reserved for people you consider harmless and irrelevant. "Oh, that's nice. It must be fulfilling to help small businesses with their basic marketing needs." Under the table, Liam squeezed my hand. Our old signal from when he was young, a way to communicate without words. He knew I was biting my tongue, and he knew why. But this was just the beginning. Over the following months, the pattern continued and intensified. Monica would share stories about her incredible colleagues, her visionary boss, who was actually my vice president of creative, and how she was destined for rapid promotion at this industry-leading agency. Every conversation was a performance designed to showcase her success and highlight, by contrast, what she saw as my small, insignificant place in the business world. What Monica didn't realize was that every story she told, every name she dropped, every detail about office dynamics and company strategy she shared was giving me a front-row seat to her professional behavior. And what I was learning was deeply troubling. She was playing a dangerous game, using my son's love for her as a stepping stone to advance her own career, all while systematically undermining the family that had welcomed her with open arms. But she had made one critical miscalculation. She had no idea who she was really dealing with, and that mistake was about to cost her everything. To understand how someone like Monica could so completely misjudge the situation she was walking into, you need to know the full story of how I built Morrison Strategic Communications and why I've spent 2 decades perfecting the art of being underestimated. It started in 1994, when I was 32 years old and had just been unceremoniously fired from Pinnacle Marketing Group. The official reason was restructuring, but everyone knew the truth. I had presented a campaign strategy that was too forward-thinking for their traditional mindset, too focused on what I saw as the inevitable digital revolution. The senior partners, all men in their 50s and 60s, dismissed my ideas as unrealistic and overly complicated. They wanted safe, conventional approaches that had worked in the past. Blanche, the managing partner, told me during my exit interview, "You're a smart woman, but you're trying too hard to be innovative. Marketing is about proven strategies, not chasing every new trend. Maybe you should consider a role that's more. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, suited to your experience level. I walked out of that office with a cardboard box containing my personal items, a modest severance check, and something more valuable than either: absolute clarity about what I needed to prove. That night, sitting at my kitchen table with my husband, Sebastian, who was then a community college literature professor, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to start my own agency, and I was going to do it my way. Not to prove them wrong exactly, but to prove myself right. Sebastian, bless him, never questioned the decision. He simply asked, "What do you need from me?" The early days were brutal. I converted our spare bedroom into an office, spent our savings on a computer and basic software, and started cold calling small businesses that the big agencies wouldn't touch. Auto repair shops, local restaurants, family-owned retail stores, businesses that needed marketing help but couldn't afford the premium rates that established agencies charged. My first client was a family-owned bakery called Sweet Dreams that was struggling to compete with a new chain store that had opened across the street. The owner, Mrs. Jennifer Kowalski, was a 60-year-old Polish immigrant who had been baking professionally for 40 years, but had no idea how to reach customers beyond word of mouth. I spent 3 days in that bakery, learning everything about Jennifer's process, her recipes, her relationship with longtime customers. Then I developed what would become my signature approach. Instead of trying to compete with the chain store's convenience and lower prices, we would emphasize what made Sweet Dreams irreplaceable: the artistry, the tradition, the personal connection. The campaign I created wasn't flashy or cutting edge. It was simple, authentic, and emotionally resonant. We told Jennifer's story through local newspaper features, community event partnerships, and yes, even though it was still new and many people were skeptical, a basic website that showcased her work and her story. Within 6 months, Sweet Dreams had not only survived the competition but was thriving. They had to hire additional staff and expand their hours. More importantly, other small business owners started calling me. But I learned something crucial during those early years. Being underestimated was actually an advantage. When bigger agencies didn't see me as a threat, they ignored me. When clients expected less because I was working from my spare bedroom, I consistently exceeded their expectations. When competitors dismissed my methods as too simple or too focused on small businesses, I was quietly building a reputation for delivering results. By 1998, I had 15 regular clients and had to hire my first employee, a recent college graduate, named Alan Thompson, who would eventually become my creative director. By 2000, we had outgrown the spare bedroom and rented our first real office space. By 2005, we were competing for mid-size corporate accounts and winning. The breakthrough moment came in 2007 when we landed the Colorado Tourism Board campaign. It was a contract worth more than everything I had earned in the previous 3 years combined, and we were competing against agencies with 10 times our resources and 50 times our name recognition. Our pitch was different from everyone else's. While other agencies focused on Colorado's natural beauty, mountains, skiing, outdoor recreation, we dug deeper. We researched what actually motivated people to choose vacation destinations, conducted focus groups with families from different regions, and discovered something the bigger agencies had missed. People weren't just looking for beautiful scenery. They were looking for experiences that would create lasting memories with the people they loved. Our campaign, Colorado, Where Stories Begin, didn't just showcase locations. It showed moments. Families discovering hidden waterfalls, couples watching sunsets from mountain peaks, children experiencing snow for the first time. The tagline was simple, but the execution was sophisticated, using emerging digital platforms alongside traditional media in ways that none of our competitors had considered. We won the contract, and the campaign exceeded every performance metric. Tourism to Colorado increased by 18% that year, and our work won 3 national advertising awards. More importantly, it established Morrison Strategic Communications as a serious player in the Denver market. Suddenly, Fortune 500 companies were calling us. Political candidates wanted our help with their campaigns. Established businesses that had never heard of us were requesting proposals for major product launches. But here's what I learned during this period of rapid growth. Success can make you visible in ways that aren't always beneficial. Suddenly, competitors who had ignored me were paying attention. Larger agencies started trying to poach my best employees or undercut our bids. Some clients began questioning whether we could handle their growing needs or if they should move to a more established firm. That's when I made another strategic decision that would prove crucial years later when dealing with Monica. Instead of trying to compete on visibility and reputation, areas where larger, more established agencies would always have advantages, I would compete on results and relationships while maintaining strategic invisibility. I restructured the company to operate through division heads and project managers. I stepped back from client-facing roles and focused on strategy and oversight. I stopped attending industry conferences and networking events where I might be recognized. I deliberately kept my personal profile low while ensuring that Morrison's strategic communications work spoke louder than any personal branding ever could. This approach allowed me to observe our employees, our clients, and our competitors. Without the filter that comes with being recognized as the owner, I could sit in on meetings where people spoke freely about their real opinions. I could watch how team members behaved when they thought no authority figure was present. I could assess character and competence without the performance that people put on when they know they're being evaluated by the boss. It also meant that when someone like Monica joined our team, she had no idea that the woman her boyfriend's mother, the woman she dismissed as running a tiny consulting firm, was actually the person who signed her paychecks. This invisibility wasn't just a business strategy. It had become a superpower. And Monica was about to discover just how dangerous it could be to underestimate someone whose power you never saw coming. The first time Liam mentioned Monica, it was during one of our regular Sunday dinners. He had that particular glow that only comes with new love, the kind where everything seems brighter and more possible. Sebastian and I exchanged glances across the table, both recognizing the signs. Our son was smitten. "Her name is Monica Rivera," he said, unable to suppress his smile. "She's incredible, Mom. Brilliant, ambitious, funny. She just landed this amazing job at one of Denver's top marketing agencies." I felt a small jolt of recognition at his description of her workplace, but I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of work does she do there?" "Junior marketing associate, but she's already making waves. She has all these innovative ideas about digital campaigns and consumer psychology. She went to Northwestern, got her degree in communications and marketing. She's exactly the kind of person who's going to change the industry." The pride in his voice was unmistakable, and it warmed my heart even as it triggered my maternal protective instincts. Liam had always been thoughtful about relationships. He'd introduced us to a few girlfriends over the years, but never with this level of enthusiasm. This mattered to him in a way that made it matter to us. "When do we get to meet her?" Sebastian asked, setting down his coffee cup with the careful precision he used when he was genuinely interested in something. "Actually," Liam said, his excitement building, "I was hoping you'd ask. Would it be okay if I brought her to dinner next Sunday? I know you guys will love her." I spent the week preparing for that dinner with more care than I'd given to some client presentations. I wanted to create the perfect environment for getting to know the woman who had captured my son's heart. I planned a menu that would spark conversation, nothing too formal that might make her nervous, but substantial enough to show we considered this important. I even bought flowers for the dining room table, something I rarely bothered with for family dinners. When they arrived that following Sunday, My first impression of Monica was overwhelmingly positive. She was strikingly beautiful, with glossy, dark hair and the kind of polished confidence that spoke of careful attention to personal presentation. She wore a perfectly tailored dress that was professional without being stuffy, expensive without being flashy. Everything about her appearance suggested someone who understood the importance of image and knew how to use it effectively. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, offering a firm handshake and direct eye contact. "Thank you so much for having me. Liam has told me wonderful things about both of you." Her manners were impeccable. She complimented our home without overdoing it, asked thoughtful questions about Sebastian's literature courses, and expressed genuine interest in our family history. She helped clear dishes without being asked, and laughed at Sebastian's dry academic humor in a way that seemed authentic rather than performative. But as the evening progressed, I began to notice patterns that triggered subtle warning signals I couldn't quite articulate. Monica dominated the conversation in a way that felt natural, but was actually quite strategic. Every topic somehow circled back to her experiences, her opinions, her achievements. When Sebastian mentioned a book he was teaching, she had read it and had strong opinions about it. When I asked about her family, she gave brief, polite answers before steering the conversation back to her career aspirations. When Liam tried to share a story about his own work, she listened with half attention before jumping in with a related anecdote about her own professional challenges. It wasn't rude, exactly. She was engaging and articulate. But there was something calculating about how she managed the flow of conversation, as if she were conducting an interview rather than participating in a family dinner. The moment that crystallized my unease came when I asked her about her new job. "Oh, it's absolutely incredible," she said, her eyes lighting up with genuine enthusiasm. "Morrison Strategic Communications is honestly the most innovative agency in Denver. The work we're doing is revolutionary. We're completely reimagining how brands connect with consumers in the digital age." I managed to keep my expression neutral, but internally I was fascinated. She was describing my company to me with the passion of someone who truly believed in the work, which I appreciated. But she was also speaking with the authority of someone who considered herself an integral part of our success after less than 2 months on the job. "What kind of projects are you working on?" I asked, genuinely curious to hear her perspective on our recent campaigns. "Well, I can't share specifics because of confidentiality agreements," she said with a conspiratorial smile. "But let's just say that some of Colorado's biggest brands are about to see their market share increase significantly thanks to strategies I've helped develop." The confidence was breathtaking. Monica had been assigned to 2 small projects since joining the company, both under the supervision of senior associates who had guided every decision. But in her retelling, she had become the driving force behind major strategic initiatives. Liam was beaming with pride as she spoke, clearly captivated by her ambition and self-assurance. Sebastian, I noticed, was listening with the careful attention he gave to students whose essays showed promise but needed significant revision. "That's exciting," I said carefully. "The marketing industry can be challenging, especially for someone just starting out. Are you finding the transition from academic study to professional practice difficult?" Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Not really. I think my generation has advantages in understanding digital marketing that some of the more traditional professionals struggle with. Fresh perspectives are exactly what agencies like Morrison need to stay competitive." The subtle dismissal of traditional professionals wasn't lost on me, nor was the implication that established workers might be holding back companies like mine. But what struck me most was her assumption that she understood what Morrison Strategic Communications needed after 8 weeks on the job. Over the following months, as Monica became a regular presence in our lives, these patterns intensified. She spoke about her work with increasing authority, describing herself as a key contributor to campaigns she had barely participated in. She offered career advice to Liam based on her limited professional experience. she made casual comments about how older workers in her industry were struggling to adapt to modern marketing approaches. Each dinner, each casual conversation, each family gathering revealed more about how Monica saw herself in relation to others. She was charming, intelligent, and ambitious, all qualities I could admire. But beneath the polished surface was a troubling sense of entitlement and a tendency to diminish others to elevate herself. The most concerning pattern was how she subtly positioned herself as Liam's guide to professional success. She critiqued his company's approach to software development, suggested he wasn't being aggressive enough in pursuing promotions, and hinted that his loyalty to his current employer might be holding him back from better opportunities. "You're so talented, babe," she would say, taking his hand across the dinner table. "You could be making twice as much at a more innovative company. Sometimes staying comfortable prevents us from reaching our full potential." I watched my son absorb these suggestions with the openness of someone in love, someone who trusted his partner's judgment and wanted to see himself through her admiring eyes. It broke my heart a little, because I could see how her confidence was reshaping his own self-perception, making him question choices that had served him well. But I also realized that Monica's behavior was giving me invaluable insight into her character. Insight that would prove crucial when I discovered just how far her ambition and manipulation extended beyond our family dinners. 3 months into Monica and Liam's relationship, she made her first direct request for my help. It came during what seemed like a casual conversation after Sunday dinner, but I would later realize it was carefully planned and strategically timed. "Blanche," she said, lingering in the kitchen while Liam and Sebastian were discussing a book in the living room, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but Liam mentioned that you have experience with small business consulting. I have a friend who's struggling with her startup, and I wondered if you might have some advice." The request seemed innocent enough, and I was actually pleased that she was turning to me for professional guidance. It suggested a level of respect for my expertise that I hadn't seen before. "Of course," I replied, drying my hands on a towel. "What kind of business is she running?" "It's a boutique fitness studio," Monica explained, her voice taking on that earnest tone I'd noticed she used when discussing anything related to her career. "She's incredibly talented, former professional dancer, amazing instructor, but she's having trouble with marketing and client retention. The big gym chains are making it really hard for independent studios to compete." I nodded, recognizing the familiar challenge that many small businesses faced. "That's definitely a tough market. What specifically is she struggling with?" "Everything. Honestly. Her social media presence is basically non-existent. She doesn't have a real marketing strategy, and she's burning through her startup capital without seeing the growth she needs. I keep telling her she needs professional help, but she can't afford to hire a real marketing firm." The way Monica emphasized real marketing firm wasn't lost on me, but I focused on the problem she was describing. Has she considered targeting a specific niche within the fitness market? Sometimes smaller studios succeed by specializing rather than trying to compete broadly. Monica's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "That's exactly what I was thinking. See, this is why I knew you'd have great insights. You understand how to make businesses work in ways that someone like me, who's still learning the industry, might miss." It was the first time Monica had acknowledged any limitation in her own expertise, and it caught me off guard. For a moment, I saw past the polished confidence to someone who might genuinely want to learn and grow. "I'd be happy to meet with your friend," I offered. "Maybe I could take a look at her current approach and give her some specific suggestions." "That would be incredible," Monica said, reaching out to touch my arm in a gesture that seemed spontaneous and grateful. "But I have to be honest with you about something. She really can't afford to pay consulting fees right now. She's already stretched so thin financially." I waved off her concern. "Don't worry about payment. If she's a friend of yours, I'm happy to help. Consider it a favor to both of you." What happened next should have been my first major red flag. but Monica delivered it so skillfully that I almost missed the manipulation. "You know what?" she said, as if the idea had just occurred to her. "Maybe I could learn something by sitting in on your consultation with her. I mean, if you don't mind. I'm always trying to improve my own skills. And watching someone with your experience work through marketing problems would be incredibly valuable for my own career development." The request seemed reasonable, even admirable. A young professional wanting to learn from someone more experienced was exactly the kind of mentorship I believed in encouraging. But something about the way she phrased it, making it about her, professional development rather than helping her friend, should have warned me about her true motivations. "Of course," I agreed. "It might actually be helpful to have you there, since you know her situation better than I do." Over the next week, Monica arranged the meeting with her friend Jennifer Walsh, a former dancer who had opened a Pilates and bar studio in a trendy but expensive neighborhood near downtown Denver. When I met Jennifer, I immediately liked her. She was passionate about her work, genuinely committed to helping her clients achieve their fitness goals, and refreshingly honest about her business challenges. "I know I'm good at what I do," Jennifer told me during our initial conversation, "but I have no idea how to get people to discover me. I'm competing with chains that have massive advertising budgets and established brand recognition. I feel like I'm shouting into the void." I spent 2 hours with Jennifer, reviewing her current marketing efforts, analyzing her target demographic, and developing a comprehensive strategy that focused on her unique strengths. We identified her ideal client profile: professional, women in their 30s and 40s who valued personalized attention and high-quality instruction over convenience and low prices. We developed a referral program that would leverage her existing client satisfaction, created a social media strategy that showcased her expertise through educational content, and outlined partnerships with local businesses that served similar demographics. Throughout the consultation, Monica took detailed notes and asked thoughtful questions. She seemed genuinely engaged with the strategic thinking process, and several times she offered insights that showed real understanding of marketing principles. "This is exactly what we should be doing at Morrison Strategic Communications," she said at one point, referring to the personalized approach I was recommending for Jennifer's studio. "Too many agencies try to apply the same broad strategies to every client instead of really understanding what makes each business unique." I was impressed by her observation and pleased that she was connecting general principles to her own work environment. It seemed like she was genuinely learning and growing from the experience. The meeting concluded with Jennifer expressing profound gratitude for the strategic direction I had provided. "This gives me hope that I can actually make this work," she said, tears in her eyes. "I can't thank you enough for taking the time to help me." As we left the studio, Monica was effusive in her praise for how I had handled the consultation. "That was incredible to watch," she said. "You made it look so easy, but I could see how much strategic thinking went into every recommendation. Jennifer is so lucky to have someone with your expertise helping her." What I didn't realize at the time was that Monica had been conducting her own kind of consultation during that meeting. Not about Jennifer's business, but about my approach to problem solving, my professional methodologies, and my willingness to provide significant value without expecting immediate compensation in return. 3 weeks later, Monica made her second request for help, and this time it was much more substantial. "Blanche," she said during another post-dinner kitchen conversation, "I hate to ask this, but I'm hoping you might be able to help me with something personal. It's about my career, and I know you understand the marketing industry in ways that most people don't." This time there was no pretense about helping a friend. This was directly about Monica and what she wanted from me. And this time, her request would reveal just how far she was willing to go to use my family's resources for her own advancement. Monica's second request came with tears in her eyes and a story that pulled at every protective instinct I had as both a mother and a mentor. "I'm being sabotaged at work," she said, her voice trembling with what appeared to be genuine distress. There's this senior associate, Chris Martinez, who feels threatened by me. She's been taking credit for my ideas, excluding me from important meetings, and I think she's been talking to management about my performance. We were sitting in my living room after dinner, Liam holding her hand while Sebastian and I listened with growing concern. Monica had never shown vulnerability like this before, and the contrast with her usual confidence was striking. What kind of things is she doing specifically? I asked, my professional instincts kicking in. Workplace politics could be vicious, and I'd seen talented people destroyed by insecure colleagues. Last week, I developed a comprehensive social media strategy for one of our major clients, Monica explained, wiping away a tear. I spent hours researching their target demographic, analyzing their competitors, creating content calendars. When I presented it to the team, Chris barely commented. But then yesterday, I found out she presented almost identical ideas to the client as her own work. Liam's jaw tightened with anger. That's theft, Monica. You can't let her get away with that. It gets worse, Monica continued. She's been scheduling important project meetings when she knows I have other commitments, then telling management that I'm not sufficiently engaged with team initiatives. And she's been questioning my qualifications in front of other associates, suggesting that I got my position through connections rather than merit. The irony of that last accusation would become apparent to me much later. But at the time, I was focused on what appeared to be a young woman being systematically undermined by a threatened colleague. Have you spoken to your supervisor about this? Sebastian asked, his professor instincts recognizing the pattern of workplace bullying he'd seen in academic settings. I've tried, Monica said, her voice breaking slightly. But Chris has been there for 3 years, and she has relationships with management that I don't have yet. When I brought up my concerns, my supervisor suggested that maybe I was being overly sensitive, that this was just normal competitive dynamics. I felt a surge of protective anger. I'd seen this scenario countless times in my own industry. Talented women being pushed out by insecure colleagues who felt threatened by fresh perspectives and innovative ideas. What do you need from us? I asked, already mentally formulating strategies that might help. I hate to ask this, Monica said, looking directly at me, but I was wondering if you might be willing to write a recommendation letter for me. I know we haven't worked together directly, but you've seen my strategic thinking during the consultation with Jennifer. If I'm going to survive this situation, I need to document that respected professionals recognize my capabilities. The request seemed reasonable and modest. A recommendation letter was a small thing, and if it could help protect a talented young woman from workplace sabotage, I was happy to provide it. Of course, I said immediately. I'd be glad to write a letter highlighting your analytical skills and strategic thinking. Monica's relief was palpable. Thank you so much, Blanche. I can't tell you what this means to me. Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Monica's work situation improved dramatically. The conflicts with Chris Martinez seemed to resolve themselves. Monica began receiving recognition for her contributions to client projects. She was assigned to more high-profile campaigns and started building the kind of professional relationships that would support her career growth. "Think your recommendation letter made all the difference," she told me during one of our Sunday dinners. My supervisor mentioned that she'd received positive feedback about me from external sources, and suddenly Chris started treating me like a colleague instead of a competitor. I was pleased that my small intervention had helped, but I was also impressed by how Monica handled her improved circumstances. Instead of becoming arrogant or vindictive toward Chris, she remained professional and focused on her work. She seemed to have learned from the experience and developed more sophisticated strategies for navigating office politics. Liam was visibly proud of how Monica had weathered the workplace storm. "You handled that whole situation so maturely," he told her one evening. "A lot of people would have gotten bitter or started looking for revenge, but you stayed focused on doing great work and proving yourself professionally." Monica smiled, taking his hand. I learned that from your mom. Actually, watching how she approached Jennifer's business problems taught me that the best response to challenges is strategic thinking and consistent excellence, not emotional reactions. I was touched by her acknowledgement and genuinely hopeful that Monica was growing into the kind of professional and person who would be worthy of my son's love. For several months, this pattern continued. Monica's career flourished, her relationship with Liam deepened, and our family dinners became genuinely enjoyable occasions where everyone felt comfortable and valued. Monica seemed to have found her footing both professionally and personally, and I began to think that my initial reservations had been unfounded. But what I didn't know was that Monica had learned something far more valuable from our interactions than strategic thinking or professional resilience. She had learned exactly how to identify and exploit my protective instincts, my willingness to help ambitious young people, and my desire to see my son happy. And she was about to use that knowledge in ways that would reveal her true character. The night everything changed started like any other Sunday dinner. Monica and Liam arrived at our house around 5:30, Monica carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the kind of effortless smile that had become familiar over the past 8 months. She complimented Sebastian on the new roses he'd planted in our front garden and asked about the status of a paper he was writing for an academic journal. But something was different that evening. Monica seemed distracted, checking her phone more frequently than usual and responding to our conversation with slightly delayed reactions, as if her mind was elsewhere. "Everything okay at work?" I asked as we sat down to dinner. "Oh, it's fine," she said, waving off my concern. "Just some drama with upper management. You know how corporate environments can be. Lots of politics and posturing." Sebastian passed the salad bowl around the table. "Anything serious?" Monica hesitated, then shook her head. "Nothing I can't handle. There's apparently some mystery owner who's been evaluating personnel decisions lately. Everyone's a little on edge, wondering what changes might be coming." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. She was describing the annual performance review process I had implemented to ensure we were promoting the right people and addressing any personnel issues before they became major problems. It was a standard business practice, but Monica was describing it like some ominous threat hanging over the company. "That sounds stressful," Liam said sympathetically. "Do you think your job is secure?" "My job is fine," Monica replied with a confidence that seemed forced. "I've been consistently exceeding expectations, and my supervisors have been very complimentary about my contributions. It's just unsettling when you don't know who's really making decisions behind the scenes." After dinner, Monica excused herself to make a phone call while Liam helped Sebastian and me clear the dishes. "I need to check in with a friend about plans for next weekend," she explained, stepping out onto our back patio. I was loading the dishwasher when I heard her voice through the kitchen window which overlooked the patio. She was speaking quietly, but our house was old and the windows weren't particularly soundproof. "Yeah, his mom is this washed-up has-been who thinks she's still relevant because she runs some tiny consulting firm," I heard her say, her voice carrying that sharp, dismissive tone I'd never heard her use before. "She keeps giving me career advice like she knows anything about the modern workplace." I just smile and nod, but honestly, she's probably jealous that I'm already making more at 25 than she ever did. I stood frozen at the kitchen sink, a dinner plate still in my hands, trying to process what I was hearing. The cruel laughter that followed her words felt like a physical blow. "The funny thing is, she actually thinks I value her opinion," Monica continued. "Like when she helped that friend of mine with the fitness studio. She was so proud of herself for giving basic business advice that any first-year marketing student could have provided. But she acted like she was sharing some profound wisdom." My face burned with humiliation and anger. The consultation with Jennifer hadn't been basic advice. It had been a comprehensive strategic analysis that had helped save her business. But Monica had reduced it to something trivial, something to mock in private while accepting my help with gratitude to my face. "Don't worry," Monica's voice continued. "Once Liam and I are married, I'll make sure he keeps his distance from her. She's holding him back with all her outdated thinking and small-time mentality. He could be doing so much better professionally if he wasn't always asking for her advice." The plate slipped from my hands and clattered into the sink, but I barely noticed. Monica was planning to isolate my son from his family. All those months of family dinners, of building relationships, of accepting our help and guidance, it had all been an act while she systematically planned to cut us out of Liam's life. "I mean, seriously," Monica went on, "her consulting firm is probably just helping mom-and-pop shops set up Facebook pages. Meanwhile, I'm working on campaigns for major corporations, developing strategies that actually matter in the real business world. But she talks to me like I'm some intern who should be grateful for her guidance." I heard footsteps on the patio and quickly turned back to the dishes, trying to compose myself before Monica returned to the kitchen. When she came back inside, her expression had shifted seamlessly to the warm, appreciative demeanor I'd become accustomed to. "Sorry about that phone call," she said brightly. "My friend Jennifer wanted to update me on how the fitness studio is doing. She says your advice has been incredibly helpful. She's seeing real improvement in her client retention." The casual mention of Jennifer, whose consultation Monica had just mocked as basic advice, made my stomach turn. But I managed to keep my voice steady. "That's wonderful to hear," I replied, not trusting myself to say more. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I made appropriate responses to the conversation, laughed at the right moments, and hugged Monica goodbye when they left. But inside, I was reeling from the discovery of who she really was beneath the polished exterior. As I watched their car pull away from our house, I realized that everything I thought I knew about Monica Rivera had been carefully constructed performance. And now I had to decide what to do with the truth I'd accidentally discovered. The woman my son loved, the woman I'd tried so hard to welcome into our family, saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to be managed and eventually removed. But she had made one critical error in her assessment of the situation. She had no idea who she was really dealing with. That night, after Sebastian had gone to bed, I sat in my home office staring at my computer screen, wrestling with a decision that would change everything. For the first time in my professional career, I was about to use my position as company owner to investigate one of my own employees for personal reasons. The ethical implications weren't lost on me. Monica had a right to privacy, a right to express her opinions freely, even if those opinions were cruel and dismissive. But she also had no right to use her position at my company as leverage to manipulate my family while planning to isolate my son from the people who loved him. I opened our HR database and pulled up Monica Rivera's employee file. What I found was both illuminating and disturbing. Monica had been hired 8 months earlier as a junior marketing associate, brought in through our standard recruitment process with what appeared to be solid credentials from Northwestern University. Her initial interview notes described her as confident, articulate, and ambitious with strong academic background in digital marketing strategies. But her performance reviews told a different story. Her first quarterly review, conducted by Alan Thompson, my creative director, noted concerns about collaborative approach and tendency to overstate contributions to team projects. Her second review mentioned multiple complaints from colleagues about credit-taking and undermining behavior during group assignments. Most telling was an incident report filed just 3 weeks earlier by Chris Martinez, the senior associate Monica had claimed was sabotaging her career. According to Chris's detailed account, Monica had indeed developed a social media strategy for a client, but it had been largely derivative of existing successful campaigns and had required significant revision before it could be presented. When Chris had made the necessary improvements and presented the final version to the client, Monica had accused her of stealing her work. Ms. Rivera seems to have difficulty distinguishing between initial concepts and fully developed strategies. Chris had written. She also appears to believe that any refinement or improvement of her ideas constitutes theft rather than standard collaborative development process. I leaned back in my chair, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. The workplace drama Monica had described to us, the sabotage, the exclusion from meetings, the questioning of her qualifications, it had all been her interpretation of normal management responses to performance issues. But there was more. I discovered that Monica had been telling colleagues she had connections that would help advance her career. She'd mentioned dating someone whose family had business relationships in the Denver marketing community. She'd even suggested that her promotion potential was stronger than other junior associates because of her network. She had been using her relationship with Liam, and by extension her connection to me, as workplace currency while simultaneously mocking us behind our backs. I spent the next hour reviewing every project Monica had been assigned to, every team she'd worked with, every client interaction she'd been involved in. A pattern emerged that was both professionally concerning and personally infuriating. Monica was talented, no question about that. Her initial concepts showed creativity and understanding of current marketing trends, but she consistently struggled with execution, collaboration, and accepting feedback. More problematically, she had a tendency to present preliminary ideas as finished strategies and to take full credit for collaborative work. The recommendation letter I had written for her, the one she claimed had turned around her workplace situation, had actually been forwarded by Monica to Alan Thompson with a note suggesting that external industry professionals were taking notice of her work. She had used my letter not as documentation of her skills, but as evidence that she had influential contacts advocating for her. I closed the employee files and opened a new document, beginning to draft what would become my investigation strategy. If Monica was going to use her relationship with my family as a tool for professional advancement while planning to damage that same family, I needed to understand the full scope of her manipulation. The next morning, I called Alan Thompson and asked him to meet me for coffee. Alan had been with Morrison Strategic Communications for 15 years, starting as our first employee and growing into one of my most trusted advisors. If anyone would give me an honest assessment of Monica's performance, it would be him. I need your completely candid opinion about Monica Rivera, I told him once we were seated in a quiet corner of our usual cafe. Alan's expression grew serious. Is there a specific concern, or do you want my general assessment? Both. And Alan, this conversation stays between us. He nodded, understanding the gravity of my request. Monica has potential, but she's got some significant professional development needs. She's bright and creative, but she doesn't understand how business actually works. She thinks having good ideas is the same thing as executing them successfully. What about her relationships with colleagues? That's the bigger problem, Alan said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. She doesn't collaborate well. She sees every suggestion as criticism and every collaborative improvement as theft. The team has started working around her on projects because they know she'll create drama if they try to refine her contributions. I leaned forward. How is she managing to survive the performance review process with these issues? Alan hesitated, then spoke carefully. She's been suggesting that she has advocates in upper management, people who recognize her potential, even if her immediate supervisors don't see it. She's made some vague references to connections that might help her advancement. The manipulation was even more extensive than I had realized. Monica wasn't just using her relationship with my family as workplace leverage. She was actively undermining the management structure of my company by suggesting that she had secret supporters who would override normal performance evaluations. Alan, I said quietly, what would you recommend if you discovered that an employee was misrepresenting their connections to company leadership? His answer was immediate and unambiguous. That would be a terminable offense. Misrepresenting relationships? With management undermines the entire structure of performance evaluation and creates unfair advantages over other employees. I thanked Alan for his candor and spent the rest of the day developing my plan. Monica had made a crucial error in her TR calculations. She had assumed that I was powerless to affect her professional life because she didn't know I had any real influence in the marketing industry. But she was about to discover that her casual dismissal of my tiny consulting firm had blinded her to the reality of who was actually in control of her career. And I was going to use that blindness to teach her a lesson about the consequences of underestimating the wrong person. 2 weeks after my conversation with Alan, Monica's behavior took a dramatic turn that revealed the true extent of her manipulation. It started with what appeared to be a romantic milestone, Liam calling to tell us that he and Monica were discussing engagement. "I think she's the one, Mom," he said during one of our regular phone check-ins. "We've been talking about our future together, about what we want our life to look like. She's made me realize that I've been thinking too small about my career, about what I could accomplish if I was more strategic about my choices." The way he spoke had changed. Where Liam had always been thoughtful and measured in his decisions, now he sounded like he was reciting talking points. The confidence in his voice felt borrowed, as if he were channeling someone else's certainty rather than expressing his own. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said carefully. "What kind of changes are you considering?" "Well, Monica's helped me see that staying at my current company might be limiting my growth potential. She thinks I should be looking at positions with more innovative firms, companies that would challenge me to reach my full potential." There it was, Monica's influence reshaping my son's perception of his own career. Liam had been happy at his job, respected by his colleagues, and on track for steady advancement. But Monica had convinced him that contentment was actually complacency. "Have you been unhappy at work?" I asked. "You've always seemed to enjoy the projects you were working on." "I thought I was happy," Liam replied. "But Monica's made me realize that I was just comfortable. There's a difference between being satisfied and being challenged. She's shown me that I could be doing so much more." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Liam describing various ways that Monica had opened his eyes to opportunities he'd been missing. By the time we hung up, I was deeply concerned about how completely she had reframed his self-perception. But Monica's influence wasn't limited to Liam's career ambitions. Over the following weeks, I noticed subtle changes in how he interacted with our family. He became less available for our usual phone calls, often citing plans with Monica or work commitments that seemed to align suspiciously with family events. When Sebastian's birthday approached, Liam initially agreed to join us for dinner, but called the day before to cancel. "Monica reminded me that her company is having a networking event that night," he explained apologetically. "It's really important for her career that I be there to support her. You understand, right? Dad will understand. He knows how crucial these early career moves can be." The excuse was reasonable on its surface, but the timing felt deliberate. Monica had known about Sebastian's birthday for weeks. We'd discussed it during several family dinners. Yet somehow this crucial networking event had materialized at exactly the same time. When Sebastian's birthday dinner proceeded without Liam, I could see the hurt in my husband's eyes, though he tried to hide it behind understanding about young people's career pressures. "It's fine," he said quietly as we cleaned up after dinner. "Liam has to prioritize his future. We raised him to be responsible about his professional commitments. But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. This was the first family event Liam had missed since he'd started dating Monica, and the pattern of his increasing unavailability was becoming impossible to ignore. The most troubling incident occurred 3 weeks later, when I called Liam to let him know that Sebastian was having some concerning symptoms related to his heart condition and was scheduled for additional tests. "I'm sure it's just routine," I assured him. "But I wanted you to know in case you wanted to come with us to the appointment for moral support." "Of course I want to be there," Liam said immediately. When is it scheduled? Thursday at 2 o'clock. There was a pause. Then Liam's voice became strained. Oh, no. Monica has a big presentation that day, and I promised I'd help her prepare. She's been so stressed about it, and she really needs my support. Liam, I said gently, this is about your father's health. I know, and I feel terrible about the timing. But Monica's presentation could determine her entire career trajectory. She's worked so hard for this opportunity, and she's counting on me. Can't Sebastian reschedule the tests? The question hung in the air between us, revealing how completely Monica had reordered his priorities. My son was asking his father to reschedule cardiac tests so that he could help his girlfriend prepare for a work presentation. The tests are scheduled for when the specialist is available, I replied evenly. But you need to make whatever choice feels right to you. In the end, Liam came to Sebastian's appointment, but he spent most of the time checking his phone and texting Monica updates about her presentation preparation. When the tests came back normal, he seemed more relieved about being able to get back to Monica than about his father's health. After that incident, I realized that Monica's manipulation had progressed beyond reshaping Liam's career ambitions. She was systematically reordering his priorities, positioning herself as the most important person in his life, while gradually diminishing the significance of everyone else. This wasn't just about professional advancement or even romantic devotion. This was about control. Monica was creating a situation where Liam's loyalty to her would always supersede his commitment to family, where her needs would always take precedence over everyone else's. And I understood that if I didn't intervene, soon I was going to lose my son entirely, not to love, but to manipulation disguised as love. The time for passive observation was over. Monica had made it clear that she saw our family as obstacles to be managed and eventually removed from Liam's life. Now I was going to show her what happened when you tried to manipulate someone who actually held the power you thought you were claiming for yourself. Decided the time had come to end Monica's charade during what I knew would be the most important presentation of her career. The quarterly review meeting where junior associates presented their contributions to the company's growth and made their cases for advancement. Monica had been preparing for this presentation for weeks, treating it as her opportunity to finally prove that she deserved a promotion to senior marketing associate. She had no idea that her performance would be evaluated by the person she'd been dismissing as a washed-up has-been for months. I arrived at Morrison Strategic Communications that Thursday morning earlier than usual, wanting to observe the pre-meeting dynamics. Through my assistant, I learned that Monica had been telling colleagues this was her breakthrough moment and that she expected to be fast-tracked for promotion based on her connections and performance. She seems very confident, my assistant noted. She mentioned having advocates in upper management who recognize her potential. At exactly 10 o'clock, I walked into the conference room where 12 junior associates were gathered for their quarterly presentations. The moment I entered, conversations stopped, and everyone turned toward me with expressions ranging from curiosity to nervousness. Monica's face went through a remarkable transformation, confusion, then recognition, then a dawning horror as she realized who I was. "Good morning, everyone," I said, taking my seat at the head of the conference table. "I'm Blanche Morrison, founder and owner of Morrison Strategic Communications. I apologize for not introducing myself sooner, but I prefer to observe our company, culture without the filter that comes with titles and hierarchy." The silence in the room was absolute. Monica had gone completely pale, her hands gripping her presentation materials so tightly that her knuckles were white. "Today's presentations are particularly important to me," I continued, making deliberate eye contact with Monica, "because they help me understand not just what our junior associates are contributing to our clients' success, but how they view their role within our company culture and their relationships with colleagues and management." I gestured to Monica, who was sitting frozen in her chair. Monica, why don't you begin? I'm very interested to hear about your contributions to our recent campaigns and your perspective on your professional development here. Monica stood on unsteady legs, her usual confidence completely shattered. The woman who had spent months dismissing my expertise and mocking my relevance now had to present her work achievements to the person whose company she'd been using as leverage while planning to isolate her son from his family. I've been working on several key initiatives, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Please speak up, I said pleasantly. I want to make sure everyone can benefit from hearing about your innovative approaches to client strategy. After all, you've mentioned to colleagues that you're bringing fresh perspectives that some of the more traditional professionals in our industry might not understand. Monica's face flushed red as she realized I knew about her disparaging comments about experienced workers. Her presentation, which she had clearly rehearsed extensively, became a stumbling recitation of project names and generic marketing terminology. When she finished, I smiled and said, "Thank you, Monica. That was very illuminating. I think we should schedule a private meeting to discuss your future with Morrison Strategic Communications. My office, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock." The message was clear to everyone in the room. Monica's career at my company was about to end, and she finally understood exactly who had been holding the power all along. The private meeting with Monica the next morning was unlike anything I had experienced in 20 years of running my company. When she entered my office at exactly 9 o'clock, she looked like she hadn't slept. Her usual polished appearance was replaced by obvious exhaustion and barely contained panic. "Please, sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. Between us lay a folder containing every email she had sent claiming connections to upper management, every performance review documenting her collaborative failures, and a complete record of her attempts to use her relationship with my family as workplace leverage. "Monica," I began, keeping my voice professionally neutral, "we need to discuss your employment here and your relationship with my family." Her composure cracked immediately. "Mrs. Morrison, I can explain everything. I know some of the things I said were inappropriate, but I was frustrated and you were recorded," I interrupted gently. "In my own home, during a conversation you thought was private. You called me a washed-up has-been, dismissed my consulting work as irrelevant, and outlined your plan to isolate my son from his family once you were married." Monica's face went ashen. "I didn't mean those things. I was just venting to a friend. And I said things I didn't really believe." "Perhaps," I acknowledged. "But you also used your relationship with Liam to claim influence in this company. You told colleagues that you had connections in upper management that would fast-track your promotion. You misrepresented your contributions to team projects and undermined colleagues when they tried to provide constructive feedback." I opened the folder and slid several documents across the desk. "This is your termination paperwork. Your employment at Morrison Strategic Communications ends today." "You can't fire me for dating your son," Monica protested, desperation replacing her earlier contrition. "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "I'm firing you for violating our company's ethics policy regarding misrepresentation of professional relationships, for creating a hostile work environment through persistent credit-taking and collaborative failures, and for attempting to leverage personal connections to circumvent normal performance evaluation processes." Monica stared at the termination documents, and I could see her calculating whether she had any recourse. "What about Liam? Are you going to tell him about this?" "That depends entirely on you," I replied. "I have recordings of your private conversations about our family, documentation of your workplace behavior, and testimony from colleagues about your professional conduct. Liam deserves to know who he's considering marrying." The threat hung in the air between us. Monica understood that her relationship with my son was now entirely at my discretion. "However," I continued, "I'm not vindictive. If you resign quietly, accept responsibility for your behavior, and end your relationship with Liam honestly without trying to blame our family for your professional failure, I'll keep the details of your termination confidential." Monica was silent for several long minutes, processing the complete collapse of both her career trajectory and her personal plans. "What if I refuse?" she asked finally. "Then Liam will learn everything," I said simply. "Your opinion of his family, your plans to isolate him from us, your professional misconduct, and your use of him as workplace leverage, and all of it will be documented and verified." Monica signed the resignation papers with shaking hands, understanding that her manipulation had finally encountered someone who held more power than she had ever imagined possible. Monica's resignation was supposed to be the end of the story, but I had underestimated her desperation and her willingness to destroy relationships rather than accept responsibility for her actions. What happened next revealed the true extent of her manipulative nature and her complete inability to face consequences with dignity. 3 days after she cleaned out her desk at Morrison Strategic Communications, Monica launched what could only be described as a scorched earth campaign against our family. It started with Liam calling me in tears, completely devastated by what Monica had told him about her termination. "Mom, how could you do this to her?" he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Monica told me everything. She said you've been sabotaging her career because you didn't approve of our relationship, that you used your connections in the marketing industry to get her fired." The story Monica had crafted was masterful in its manipulation. According to her version of events, I had discovered her employment at a marketing agency and had used my industry influence to undermine her career out of jealousy and disapproval of their relationship. She had painted herself as the victim of a vindictive mother-in-law who couldn't accept her son's happiness. "She's devastated, Mom. She worked so hard to build her career, and now she's been blacklisted in Denver because of you. How am I supposed to trust you after this?" What Monica hadn't counted on was my willingness to show Liam the actual evidence of her behavior. I invited him to my house that evening and played the recording of her phone conversation, where she had mocked our family and outlined her plans to isolate him from us. Watching my son's face as he heard Monica's true opinion of his family was one of the most heartbreaking experiences of my life. The betrayal in his eyes wasn't directed at me. It was the dawning realization of how completely he had been manipulated. "She was using me," he said quietly after the recording ended. "All. This time, she was using my love for her to advance her career while planning to cut me off from my family. But Monica's desperation didn't end with trying to turn Liam against me. When that failed, she escalated to professional sabotage. She began calling clients of Morrison Strategic Communications, claiming that the company had engaged in unethical business practices and that they should reconsider their contracts with us. She contacted industry publications with false allegations about my company's hiring practices and treatment of employees. She even attempted to post negative reviews on business websites, describing Morrison Strategic Communications as a toxic workplace run by vindictive management. Each of these attempts failed because Monica's reputation in the Denver marketing community had preceded her. Word travels fast in professional circles, and her former colleagues at my company had already shared the truth about her performance issues and inappropriate behavior. More damaging to Monica's credibility was her obvious vindictiveness. Professional disagreements are common in business, but her scorched earth approach revealed a character that other industry professionals wanted no part of. Within 2 weeks of her resignation, Monica had made herself unemployable in Denver's marketing community. No reputable agency would risk hiring someone who had attempted to sabotage their former employer and had demonstrated such poor professional judgment. Her final desperate act was to threaten legal action, claiming wrongful termination and defamation. But when her attorney reviewed the evidence, the recordings, the performance reviews, the documentation of her workplace behavior, he quietly advised her that she had no case and should consider relocating to a different market where her reputation hadn't been damaged. Monica's manipulation had finally encountered consequences she couldn't talk her way out of. 6 months after Monica's departure from our lives, I stood in the lobby of the Denver Business Journal offices, watching. My son accepted the Rising Professional Award for his innovative software development work. The transformation in Liam over those months had been remarkable, not because he had changed fundamentally, but because he had rediscovered who he truly was beneath Monica's manipulation. "I want to thank my parents," Liam said during his acceptance speech, "for teaching me that real success comes from integrity, hard work, and the courage to stay true to your values even when others try to convince you that compromise is necessary for advancement." As I listened to him speak, I reflected on how Monica's attempt to isolate him from his family had ultimately strengthened our bonds. The experience had taught Liam to recognize manipulation disguised as love, to value relationships built on respect rather than control, and to trust his own judgment instead of allowing others to reshape his self-perception. After the ceremony, as we drove home together, Liam brought up Monica for the first time in months. "I've been thinking about something," he said quietly. "Do you think Monica actually believed the things she said about you? Or was it all calculated manipulation?" It was a thoughtful question that showed how much he had grown from the experience. "I think she believed them because they served her purposes," I replied. "When you're determined to see yourself as superior to others, you'll find reasons to dismiss their accomplishments and expertise." "I almost lost you and Dad because I believed her version of what success looked like," he admitted. "She made me think that loyalty to family was holding me back from achieving my potential." "But you didn't lose us," I reminded him. "When it mattered most, you recognized the truth." As for Monica, we heard through industry contacts that she had eventually found work with a small marketing firm in Phoenix. The last update suggested she was struggling to rebuild her professional reputation and had learned to keep her personal opinions about colleagues and management to herself. I felt no satisfaction in her difficulties. Monica's downfall hadn't been the result of vindictive revenge. It had been the natural consequence of her own choices and actions. She had used people, burned bridges, and ultimately discovered that manipulation has a limited shelf life in professional environments where results and character matter. The most important lesson from the entire experience wasn't about justice or consequences, but about the power of truth. Monica had built her strategy on the assumption that she could control narratives, manage perceptions, and manipulate relationships without accountability. But truth has a way of surfacing, especially when it's supported by evidence and consistent behavior. Today, Morrison Strategic Communications continues to thrive under the same principles that built it: exceptional work, honest relationships, and the understanding that real success comes from lifting others up rather than tearing them down. And I continue to wear my confidence quietly, knowing that the most powerful people are often the ones you underestimate, until it's too late to change your approach. Monica's cruel dismissal of me as a washed-up has-been had been the catalyst for her own downfall. Sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is assuming you know who really holds the power in any given situation. The end? She discovered that underestimating the wrong person doesn't just cost you opportunities, it can cost you everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.